All right, good afternoon. This is the February 17th, 2026 meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission. We will call this meeting to order at 1:03 p.m. I'm Bree Saman, and I am the interim vice chair. I am an interior designer and project manager, and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board. We'll go around the room and start with the commissioners that are here in person. And so we can each introduce ourselves, and then we'll go to our commissioner that is joining us online. Lars, do you want to start?
Yes, Lars Billman, serving as guest of the mayor, and I am a general contractor and a business owner.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Caswell Dyer. I'm a business owner, and I was nominated by History Colorado.
I'm Nick Fusianis. I'm an architect and a developer, and I was nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
And I'm Chris McGinnis, forensic architect and nominated by the mayor's office.
And I'm Emily Hazen, reservationist and designer nominated by city planning.
And I'm Brittany Bryant, Denver Landmark Preservation staff.
Okay, we'll move on to general comments from the commission or staff. Does anyone have anything to share at this meeting? Okay, so moving on to meeting records. Do any of the commissioners have any comments or clarification regarding the minutes from our February 3rd and January 20th LPC meetings? Let it be noted that the meetings do not require that there are no major objections, and the minutes are approved. So for those folks joining us virtually, we do have some audio tips. For better sound quality, we strongly encourage you to download Zoom on your desktop, laptop, tablet, or mobile device. You'll want to click the audio settings to bring up an additional menu, add a background noise suppression, and test your speaker and microphone, adjust their maximum output volumes as well. For presenters or public commenters, when it is your turn to speak, please mute or unmute, mute or unmute. Click on the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. Expanding the menu next to the microphone will reveal additional options. Select your speaker and microphone devices, test your microphone and speakers, adjust your maximum output volumes, and if you still have audio challenges, switch to phone for audio. For our public comment period, members of the public have up to 2 minutes each for comments about historic preservation in general and items on the consent review agenda, design review agenda, business items, and discussion items. For further comments on these topics will not be taken later in the meeting unless allowed by the chair. And we will note that at this meeting, we do have public hearing agenda items. So any comments that anyone has will be heard later in the meeting when we get to that portion of the agenda. So please save those comments regarding the public hearing for that time. And then to speak, we'll have you click the hand raise button in Zoom if you're joining us virtually. Dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand if joining by phone. And then you can also email landmark@denvergov.org with your name and phone number if you're having difficulty with either hand raise option. And then we'll also be taking public comment here in the room. So with that, do we have anyone here with us in the room that would like to participate in the public comment period? Okay. Do we have anyone online that would like to provide public comment? Okay, all right. So moving on to the consent agenda. These are routine projects that Landmark staff has determined meet the design guidelines for Denver landmark structures and districts and are recommended for commission approval without discussion. These may include violations already completed partially or in full if a compliant solution is proposed. The commission may approve these items as a group. However, any commission member may request that an item be moved from the consent agenda to the regular design review agenda for further consideration. Do any commissioners have any ex parte communications or recusals that they need to disclose? No. Do any commissioners have questions, or are there any items that they'd like to pull from the consent agenda?
Nope.
Okay, then if not, would anyone like to make a motion? Oh, yes, sorry, first I will read the items in the consent agenda. Number 1 is number 2026 taxi 006-260 North Race Street Country Club. Number 2026 taxi 009-50 West Ellsworth Avenue, Baker Neighborhood. Number 3, number 2026 taxi 004-537 North Gilpin Street, Driving Park. Number 4, 2026 taxi 010-2600 North Milwaukee Street, Henderson House. Number 5, 2026 taxi 008-1750 North Gilpin Street, 1750 North Gilpin Street. Number 6, 2026 taxi 011 313 West 2nd Avenue, East 7th Avenue. Number 7. Okay. Oh, sorry, I did say agenda. I got this. Okay, sorry, I will reread that one. Correction, so number 6 is actually 2026. 2026 taxi 011 313 West 2nd Avenue, Baker Neighborhood. The next one, 2026 taxi 012 2945 East 7th Avenue, East 7th Avenue. 2026 taxi 007 2111 South Fillmore Street, University Park. 2026 COA 096 760 North Josephine Street, East 7th Avenue. 2026 COA 047 238 Bannock Street, Baker Neighborhood. Okay, so now, would anyone like to make a motion?
I move to approve the agenda or the consent agenda as read.
And I will second that.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Elizabeth. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The motion passes. If your project was approved on the consent agenda, congratulations. You may leave the meeting. The Landmark staff member will follow up with your approved documents. So moving on to public hearings, we have the design guidelines for Denver landmark structures and districts. So in the public hearings, these are items that require a public hearing, such as a landmark designation application and certain demolition requests. Signs are posted on the property in advance of the meeting, and courtesy notification is sent to registered neighborhood organizations and Denver landmark preservation partners. For each item, following the applicant and staff presentations, the chair will call for public comment. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. So we have to open the public hearing. Oh, yes, I do. Yes. And with that, I am officially opening the public hearing. Figure out how to turn on my camera.
Okay, so we are here to present the design guidelines for Denver landmark structures and districts, phase 2A updates. So have a brief agenda to go over today. So first, we're going to look at the document reformat. Then we're going to look at chapter 1 revisions, followed by section 2.4 treatment of windows and doors, followed by city attorney guideline updates that we made, and then the LPC review and adoption process. So in terms of the document reformat, we made some pretty significant updates to the document. So the document was initially put together in 2012. It was a pretty old InDesign document, and we did need to update that. So just going over what that looks like here on the screen. Okay. You can see the old cover page and then the new cover page. So again, one of the reasons why we did this is because this was an old InDesign document. It was getting a little unwieldy. We needed to have better ADA accessibility. We also thought the document could have some better user-friendly guidance through it and just be more friendly to use. So in terms of that user-friendly, here are some changes we made to the document. So in the old document, the intent statements were kind of at the side. We felt that the intent statements were pretty significant and important and needed to be at the top of the page. They're really the driving purpose behind each guideline. They provide the whole purpose behind the guidelines. And anytime that there is like flexibility behind guidelines, you really need to look towards the intent statements. So in each section, so on the screen, I have section 2.3, treatment of architectural features. We just moved that at the very top of the page. So each section starts with the intent statements. They're no longer at the side. They really have visual prominence. And then you've heard me mention this a few times, but each section now is identified by a section number. So previously in the chapters, there wasn't a lot of hierarchy into each section. Each section now has been given a section number. So on the screen, we have section 2.3, treatment of architectural features. Windows and doors is section 2.4. And it follows really that section number to provide users, like anything relating to Windows is going to be in section 2.4 now for treatment of historic windows. So they can find guidelines relating to treatment of historic windows in 2.4. Treatment of architectural features are all going to be 2.3 guidelines. So it's really wayfinding for users in the document instead of it just being sequential 2.10, 2.11, 2.12. It's really wayfinding and number finding for throughout the document. So it's like that throughout the chapters. So there was a renumbering of the guidelines with this update. Additionally, with our photographs, they got moved to the bottom or the side, depending on the layout of this document. On this page, they're all at the bottom. And on this page, in the old layout, the photographs did have their own individual caption, but that was not true throughout our old document. But in our new document, each photo will have its own individual caption. So that was a pretty significant lift for us, is giving each photo its own individual caption, kind of explaining why it was there and what purpose it was serving, because it did not have that in the old document. So that was a pretty significant update and change to the document. In addition to a change to the photographs, instead of this old check mark, X mark, or asterisk that we had in the old document, each photograph gets a yes, no, or maybe. And this is also color coded to provide easier wayfinding. So all yeses are in this blue color, all no's are in this orange color, and then maybes are in this darker blue color. So obviously if it's a yes, this is something we are supporting as an approach. If it's a no, it's something we would recommend against. And then maybe is an approach that we can consider on a case-by-case basis based on what the guidelines support. So that is a change to how the photographs were identified in the document as well. Throughout the document, we did previously have these pages that provided some informational and context about the history of Denver, history of certain features such as signs. So these pages got turned into what we are now calling blue pages. And we really saw these pages as pages you could take out and rip out of the guidelines, and you can learn something about Denver, learn something about signs. So on the screen, I have historic windows. So this page got significantly overhauled. A lot of people were wanting to learn more about storm windows and window maintenance. So previously in the guidelines, this page really talked about a review process of windows. We overhauled this page to talk about what is routine maintenance for windows, what are storm and security doors, what are normal typical parts of a window. So this is how we changed this blue page for windows and doors when we were updating the windows section. We also made some changes to the historic porch section, which you can see on our screen, which included some more historic photos, talking about replacement of historic porches. We also updated some of the blue pages about signs and providing more information about what are typical sign types. We got rid of like other sign types, which are like talking about art signs. We don't review art signs here in Denver. We don't have purview over that. So we got rid of that, consolidated down some of our signs to just, the core signs that we have purview over. So these blue pages were significantly updated throughout the document. We also updated the graphics on these blue pages. So here is an example of how those graphics got updated. So this is the same page from chapter 4 that talks about infill design. So what we did was we actually took an actual infill application example and what we require for an infill submittal in terms of our streetscape study and ground plan comparison, and put that on the contextual evaluation page. So people could see what we actually require for an infill example and submittal, instead of this more high-level isometric views that doesn't provide a lot of information. So this is an example of how these blue pages got updated as well. Again, the design guidelines is intended to be a living document, so we have big ideas, plans to continue to update the graphics throughout the design guidelines. But at this time, this is as much as we could do, but we are quite proud of the graphics we were able to update. Additionally, throughout the document, we added lots of historic photos. We are Denver Landmark Preservation, and we feel like it is our duty to show off what are historic conditions in Denver and what we are striving to preserve and what we should be going back with. So we did add a lot of historic photographs throughout the document. We didn't have many of these before, so here are some pages that do have some of those historic photographs throughout the document. So that was a big change in terms of photographs throughout the document and updates that we made. So that's some changes to the format. Now going into the chapter 1 revisions, and I'm primarily going to focus on the revisions that were made from the last time that the commission reviewed this document, which was back in December. So in section 1.4, which talks about the Secretary of Interior standards, previously we focused primarily on the standards for rehabilitation, which are the primary standards that the design guidelines are based on and the tax credits are reviewed on. However, our ordinance has required us to adopt all of the Secretary of Interior standards. So we have made that clarification that we have adopted all of the standards and updated that first paragraph text to reflect that. We have also made clarification that the standards for rehabilitation are the most widely used and underpin the design guidelines and tax credit program. Because they are the most widely used, they are the standards that are still listed here on this page. So those are the standards 1 through 10 that you see listed on the page. However, this page also references that if you go to the National Park Services, you can see all of the standards and they are available there for your review. So that is a significant update we made to this page and text on this page based on comments from the City Attorney's Office, just to provide clarification that we do have adopted all of the standards from the Secretary of Interior's office. On the section regarding demolition review, we did update this section relating to demolition public hearings and the definition related to total demolition. So we didn't want to have any conflicting language with the landmark ordinance, which is the basis for how we do all of our work. So demolition is defined in the landmark ordinance. So we made sure that that did not create any conflict with what is in the landmark ordinance, and it is referenced as going to the landmark ordinance. So demolition as defined in the landmark ordinance. Now, there will be no conflict with the landmark ordinance because that is our primary guidance and document there. And then the section regarding demolition public hearings has been significantly simplified. So I don't know if you recall, but previously it had 4 bullet points on what triggered a public hearing. Those bullet points have been removed, and the text has been significantly simplified to say that because demolition is a pretty consequential decision, the LPC may hold a public hearing based on what is defined in the landmark preservation ordinance. So again, it's just telling applicants that the ordinance is the primary document for what triggers a public hearing, and to always reference that ordinance document and to not create any conflicts with our ordinance. And then finally on section 1.7, application of the guidelines. At the very last page of this chapter, chapter format was added back to this page because this very important section about what intent statements are and guidelines had been omitted from this document. And again, it just provides guidance on what intent statements are, and those that intent statements establish the goals to be achieved through the application of the guidelines for each topic, and may also be used to determine the appropriateness of alternative approaches. So intent statements are at the top of the chapter and are numbered across each chapter and provide that flexibility to the commission. And that wasn't said anywhere in this document, so that needed to be added back into this document. And then what guidelines are, so just describe a desired outcome related to the intent statements. So that was missing from this document, and that has just been added in. And that was in our old design guidelines on page 9 and was just missing from this text. So that has been incorporated back into this text. So the commission, again, previously reviewed this chapter, and those were the kind of big significant changes we made to this chapter between the public noticing that is required for this public hearing and filing with the clerk and recorder, and the refiling of this document on February 10th, when we noticed this for this public hearing with the commission on February 10th. So just wanted to point out those sections to the commission. So moving on to section 2.4, which is the treatment of windows and doors and the draft guidelines that we drafted for this section. And really the whole purpose of why we are here today as the updates to the design guidelines, and really precipitated why we were doing the document reformat as well. So our current guidelines encourage preservation of original windows, and also state that windows can only be replaced when deteriorated beyond repair, and that we use traditional materials. So wood and aluminum clad wood windows for when you have wood windows, and steel or aluminum for steel windows, and no vinyl. So that's our current window guidelines. Additionally, we require applicants to do a window assessment when they are replacing 3 or more windows. And this assessment has to be done by a third-party assessment. And we generally forward most of these applications to the commission for review, and they're not something that we as staff administratively review in most instances. So because these are very difficult applications and have made us slightly unpopular with our community. We started at looking at how we can improve this process for our applicants and how we can respond to what we are constantly hearing from our applicants regarding our window application process. So in 2023, we did start an outreach process, and we did 2 Zoom meetings and 1 in-person meeting. And our first Zoom meeting was attended by over 200 people. And attendance after that kind of dwindled, but we did have over 200 people at our first meeting, which was hosted primarily by Jesse and Abby, where they presented our peer city research, where we did look at 20 peer cities and what they do in terms of their window guidelines, what they look at, how they review windows, and shared that with our community and what we heard feedback from our community and what they would like in terms of how we review windows. Following that meeting, we did release a window survey, and we had 15 questions on that window survey, and we did get 281 responses to that window survey. On that survey, generally what we heard is people wanted to be allowed to replace their windows. They did not want to have to prove that their windows were deteriorated beyond repair. But generally speaking, people did feel like if they had wood windows should be replaced with wood. Steel windows should be replaced with steel or aluminum clad. So people generally, felt that if you had wood windows, that they should be replaced with wood, and aluminum windows should be replaced with steel. A lot of people also wanted flexibility for fiberglass. So with that information, we did incorporate fiberglass material into our design guidelines. And we did decide to get rid of a window assessment process for our application process and allow some additional flexibility for window replacement based on what we were hearing in our public meetings and through our window survey. So we decided to make the process much easier. Also, through our peer city research and through our window survey, we heard a lot about this idea of character windows and preserving what is most significant and allowing flexibility for windows that didn't have a special quality to them. So we really ran with this idea. So like I said, we decided to preserve the most important windows and doors, provide clear guidance, get rid of the window assessment, and allow additional flexibility on materials. So with these goals in mind, Amy, Jesse, Jen, and I began drafting windows guidelines. And really, we decided to focus on character windows and character front facade doors. And these were windows that we decided that had any kind of arched, round, bowed, or special glazing, ornate divided lights, distinctive mullions, special glazing, windows with distinctive craftsmanship, large windows that aren't commonly manufactured or would be difficult to replicate, doors with distinctive shapes, doors with ornate divided lights, doors with distinctive glazing, doors with distinctive craftsmen, and doors that are also difficult to replicate. So how we formed our definition of character windows and character doors was based on what we were seeing in our window survey and what the community was telling us what they felt was a character window. Additionally, we formed that definition with the commission. We brought this concept to the commission multiple times. We talked it out with the commission, and we formed a definition of character windows, which has been incorporated into the design guideline draft and has been presented to the commission a few times and is before you today as part of the adoption process. We also formed this concept of common windows and doors, and these are much simpler 1/1 windows, windows that could be easily replicated and replaced. They don't have to be 1/1 windows. They could be windows that have divided lights, but they're divided lights that could be easily manufactured today. Windows that don't have a special character to them, don't contribute to the architectural style or character of the home. So these are windows that you can replace because they are common And these are the windows that we are no longer requiring applicants to preserve. And these are the windows that we are allowing flexibility on and can be replaced, no questions asked. So if you have character windows, those are the windows that you do have to preserve. If you have common windows, you can replace them, no questions asked. So that is the flexibility we are now allowing with our new design guidelines. So with that in mind, we are presenting the new windows and doors section, which is 2.4, treatment of windows and doors. And this is on pages 24 through 31 of the guidelines. And it's really kind of 5 sections of guidelines. We have guidelines for windows and doors openings, which were a little bit derelict in our old guidelines. We didn't have too great of guidance for how to add new openings to buildings. So we have provided greater guidance there on how to add openings to buildings, additional guidance on what to do, how to put openings on buildings, etc. And now we have our, on guidelines 2.45 through 2.47, we have our guidelines for character windows. So these are, again, we start with a blue page on character windows that basically provides our definition for character windows, gives those very specific, this is what character windows are, and this is what common windows are. And it does provide a few examples of those on that blue page. And then it has those guidelines, and it does require that you preserve and repair character windows on all facades. So if you do have character windows, you are required to preserve those. However, if a replacement of a character window on a front facade or door may be considered if they are severely deteriorated. If they are severely deteriorated, it's encouraged to match the size of the character window and door and to match the appearance. You still have to use wood, aluminum clad wood, or fiberglass composite if you have a wood window. And if you have steel, then you're encouraged to use steel, aluminum clad wood, or fiberglass composite. So again, flexibility on those materials as we were hearing from our applicants. Same with the front facade door. If it's a character front facade door, you're encouraged to preserve that and only replace if it's deteriorated beyond repair. So those are our new character window and front facade door guidelines. And then we have our guidelines for common windows and doors, which are guidelines 2.48 through 2.49. And again, we are not requiring these to be preserved. So the guidelines mainly focus on when you're replacing these. We were hearing from our community, which is what is most important is that the opening not be infilled, not be shrunk down. So what the guidelines focus on is fitting within that opening, not, making any alteration to that opening, not shimming that opening in any way, and then matching the appearance of the window. You don't necessarily have to match the operation, just the appearance of that operation. Again, additional flexibility on materials. However, we're still not allowing vinyl because that is not an appropriate material to use within our historic districts. And then finally, we end with egress windows, which we did not make any significant changes to our egress window section. We just moved it to the end because it was kind of breaking up our window guidelines. But we did add additional egress windows guidelines for above grade because we didn't have great guidance there. So that is guideline 2.411. So those are our window guidelines. So now moving on, we did have our city attorney review our guideline updates, and they did have a few comments for us. So I just want to go over that and what was filed with the clerk and recorder on January, and then updates that were made on February 10th. So in guideline 2.41E, we had a guideline that said, consider opportunities to return altered window and door openings to their historic configuration. It was recommended that we update the text to get rid of consider, because that's not really an enforceable guideline. So we changed that text to return altered window and door openings to their historic configuration whenever possible. So if you're making alterations to those original window and door openings, you should return them to their original configuration whenever possible. So that is a change to that text there that we made between January and February 10th. On our egress guidelines, which is guideline 2.410 now, but was previously guideline 2.8, we just struck the text defined by current zoning and building code. It's just superfluous text. We don't need it in there. So we just got rid of that language. It's just gone now. In our lighting guidelines, which was guideline 5.18H, previously we got rid of the text, do not design lighting for the sole purpose of attracting attention to residential buildings. We didn't really feel like this was an enforceable guideline. What does this actually mean? And we felt like we had other guidelines that provided additional guidance on what the intent of H really meant. So we just struck 5.18, or sorry, 518H from the guidelines. So that is no longer in the text. In the signage section, there were some guidelines that we had concerns with that were in conflict with a Supreme Court ruling over freedom of speech. So we did remove those guidelines. So I'm going to go over what those were. So in 6.2, there was there was a guideline that said create signs that are attractive and readable during the day and night. So really, what does an attractive sign mean? That's very subjective. So we struck the term attractive from that guideline. So 6.2B just now says create signs that are readable during the day and night, no longer has that attractive requirement. In our awning signage section in 6.16E, there was a guideline that said do not add logos to awnings. Again, this is against what you can say per the Supreme Court and freedom of speech. So we just struck this guideline from our text. So we no longer have that in our guidelines. And then in window signage, 6.18C also had some guidance about what windows signage should say. And it said that it should be supplemental signage such as fresh oysters, fine dining, fun times. Again, you can't really dictate specifically what signs say, so we struck that from our guidelines. And that is, again, to comply with the Supreme Court ruling. So that guideline is now gone as well. And again, the guidelines are intended to be a living document. We do plan to do a more comprehensive update to our signage guidelines, as we are aware that there are some other things that we would like to address in terms of the signage guidelines, but for now we felt these were easy things that we could just strike from the guidelines. So in terms of LPC review and adoption, the LPC has discussed the Windows guidelines and the reformat of the document a few times. So in September of 2025, the Commission did review the public comment and draft of the window and door guidelines. So we did have the window and door design guidelines posted on our website for 30 days, I believe, for the public to review. And we did get a few comments regarding those. And we did put together this matrix spreadsheet of how we were going to respond to most of the comments, which we did respond to most of the comments. Some of them we just felt like were for later updates or things that we couldn't respond to at the time, but we did go over those with the Commission at our September 2nd meeting. And then on October 21st, we did again go over the Chapter 1 and draft window and door guidelines with the commission, going over exactly what was changing, what exactly new definitions were proposed based on these guidelines, really thorough review of the windows and door guidelines. And then on December 2nd, we provided a draft layout of Chapter 1 and Section 2.4 and the updated layout of the draft chapter so the commission could see how the new layout was working. And we did get comments from the commissioner, so I just put a sample of some of those comments up on the screen that we did incorporate into that. So the commission has reviewed these documents a few times at a public meeting. Per the rulemaking process, we did file public notice of this document 20 days prior to this public hearing, so back in January. And then we also refiled this document to address minor typos, city attorney comments, and we did that on February 10th, which was noticed to the commission with this agenda packet. And we are very proud of this and would love for you to adopt it. But I think Amy has some additional comments that she would like to share.
Yeah, I wanted to add a few things to that. Thank you, Brittany. So as Brittany said, we're very proud of this. We want to thank everyone who has had a hand in this. This is a very exciting moment for you to act as policymakers to complement your more standard role as decision makers. This is a moment where we all get to enjoy how well local government still functions, how close you are to the community that you're serving. As Brittany says, although we don't have a lot of your the people that you are serving in the room with us today, you've seen how they've participated in providing their input into this process in meetings that have led up to this. So now you've heard from them in shaping this document, you've heard from staff, the city attorney's office, and you will be compiling all that into the document that you adopt to carry forward. And this is, I think, really a legacy here because this is a big change, at least in terms of how windows and doors will be treated moving forward. And again, we're just really proud of all the work that has gone into this. I wanted to take the opportunity because you are shaping this policy to follow up a little bit on the training that we had last week where we were giving you some ideas about how to apply design guidelines and particularly how to weigh them when you're struggling with a decision. I wasn't in the room, but I was listening to the training and some of the comments you all were having when you weren't sure how to make a decision. So again, this is where you are creating this policy and you're all hopefully going to gather behind some document that we then use as a very important tool for communication. As we've shown you before, the vast majority of decisions on treatments of historic properties are actually made by staff on your behalf using this document. And aside from that, we are constantly coaching people on how they might prepare a successful application that we would bring to you. So it's very important that we all agree that although every application is going to be a little different, site to site, neighborhood to neighborhood, that this document conveys generally how someone will succeed in front of you and what your thoughts and ideas are in treatment of a historic property. If Bree will let me use her as an example since she's chair today, it wouldn't be great if Bree secretly hates stucco, for instance, and intends to bring that idea to every decision. She may hate stucco, but that is not something that she should be applying in this room. If a project is brought forward that has stucco and she feels looking at it that it is the use of it does not meet a design guideline because it's not present in the neighborhood, it somehow doesn't provide the texture on a building that is typical of the neighborhood, that's fine. That's founded in the guidelines. But there was some discussion last week about, and I hope you'll allow me just to use the words that were used at the time, someone struggling with when you have a personal opinion about something or when you feel that something fails to meet your standard of common sense. I do understand that these decisions are difficult. But those are criteria that no one can prepare themselves for when they are trying to create an application again that would be successful in front of you. That creates an arbitrary decision-making process that we just really want to encourage you to be always focused on the criteria that are in our ordinance and the guidelines that you're hopefully adopting today. So I just wanted to make that an important part of this discussion today. We are a certified local government. That's an important standard for us that allows us to be able to let people access tax credits that you just approved today. To be a certified local government, we have to have an ordinance that meets certain standards, and we have to have a decision-making process that is held to certain standards. So again, root all of your decisions in the criteria in the ordinance and the design guidelines that are adopted. Always stay focused on those. When you have your deliberations, that is the time. We want you to bring your expertise and your past experience with materials or whatever it is to the discussion. And you're not always going to agree with each other, and you're not always going to read the design guidelines the same way. But those design guidelines are the basis for your decision. There was some discussion, I think, at the end of the meeting last week or 2 weeks ago about when it might be appropriate to abstain. You do have the right under Robert's Rules of Order to abstain on a decision. I've discussed this with the attorney's office, and if Adam wants to weigh in if I'm not expressing this correctly. Examples of times when you might abstain would be if you feel at the end of a discussion that you have insufficient information to make a knowledgeable decision, or if you're truly divided or deadlocked in your own mind on what would be a decision that you could make on the case in front of you. We do want to encourage you to try to act on the cases that are in front of you because applicants have their own needs to move forward with their projects. But abstaining is a possibility. So I think that's all that I wanted to present on that. We do recommend adoption of the design guidelines. We are always happy to come back with additional trainings, as we've said, to help you with these questions in the future.
We don't have an applicant, so I think we'll take public comment now.
Do we have any public comment in the room or online?
I don't have public comment on this particular subject. Do I wait?
So we had public comment earlier in the meeting regarding all other projects. What is your public comment regarding?
Well, I'm a homeowner in the Lincoln Park La Alma district. My home was built in 1890 and we were not included in the historic district. And now with the Broncos Stadium potentially most likely coming, I and some of my neighbors would like to petition to be included in the historic district. Our homes were built to house railroad workers, which ultimately built the city.
I would recommend you email us about that because that would be an amendment to our La Alma Lincoln Park Historic District. But I think Jenna is going to come over to talk to you.
Yeah. Great, thank you so much.
So it looks like no public comment.
If you're online and you have any comment, please use the hand raise function. Sharing so you can enter deliberation.
Yes. So with that, we are going to close the public hearing and move on to commission deliberation. So commissioners, do we have any thoughts?
Just a question to staff. Do you guys have this technically like third party reviewed at all, or is just internally reviewed by staff?
Well, it's been posted on our website for the last,
Not by public, but by like a third party technically reviewed.
oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. No, I don't think we've sent it out for that kind of peer review, if that was your question.
That was my question.
So it's a living document, right? So to the extent, if you wanted to add a sheet or how difficult is that?
It is a living document, and in fact, we have additional phases planned. Of course, you all can ask for revisions at any time. We have phases planned ahead. For instance, we are going to be working on new guidelines for ADUs next. Because right now, if someone proposes an ADU, we're sort of fumbling around using the standards we have for garages and accessory structures, which are inadequate. But you all can suggest, since you'd like to see revisions, we certainly have limitations on our capacity, but that is possible.
Right, so it would be, like if there was a typo and you guys were like, whoops, let's just make this change. Is that a huge lift or is that?
So it does require a rulemaking process. So we would have to file with the clerk and recorder 20 days. We have to do public hearing. But like right now, we're still in a public hearing process. So if the commission adopts today, like you can still tell us like, oh, there's a typo on this page. Like we can still make those changes.
Without real.
Yes.
But otherwise we live with it until, okay.
Yeah, so I'm seeing some technical things in here that I would think are not correct. And I think they would be probably more easily resolved before it gets adopted than after, if I'm not mistaken.
Such as.
Such as there's really no such thing as a flat roof. There's a low slope roof, right? Because it all has to drain, right? So there's no such thing as a flat roof. Like the foundation, you have a picture of a column. It's not really a foundation. It's a column. I mean, there's a couple other things in here. I could go on for a few other things and this is like a 5-minute review I just did. So I think it needs to be technically reviewed by a third party because there are some issues.
Yeah, I mean, those I'm sure are terms that have been in the guidelines since they were written. I think those are probably cleanups that we could include in the revision that we have right now.
I mean, I've never heard it called a low sloped roof. I mean, in my world, we call it a flat roof. It could be a use of the vernacular versus technical, but the point is this is for the public to read and no one's gonna know what a low slope roof is.
Yeah, but I mean, you need to be technically correct. And it's really important.
And I would say our guidelines were initially written by a consultant. We did not write the initial guidelines. So a lot of the cleanups that we're doing are because concerns over some of the consultant language.
Yeah.
But they're time consuming.
Yeah, no, I get it, and I get the process of doing that, but I would emphasize that being technically correct, because I will backtrack a little bit. I really appreciate that you guys are trying to educate the public, and I think that you guys are trying to do this in this document, which I think it's a really good idea, just saying, hey, a lot of first-time homeowners are buying into these historic properties, and you're trying to say, hey, these are some of the elements of a historic property. There's some of the things to consider, and I think that's great. But if you're going to do that, then I think you need to be technically correct in doing so.
I think it is a very good point, though, that this is a layman's document, and perhaps we could have something like flat, also known as low slope, or something like that.
That would make sense, because if I read this, and I deal with professionals, I deal with engineers, I replace roofs all the time, we don't call it a low slope roof, it's referred to as a.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people who don't know what they're talking about too.
Yeah, but I think doing also known as a flat roof or something like that, because if I read low slope roof, I would not think that applied to what we all refer to as a flat roof. So.
That doesn't make it justified just because people don't know what they're talking about.
I also think going down a rabbit hole isn't helpful to the public.
No, but I think
You need to understand
you
what
need to
we're
be
actually
technically
talking about.
correct, and if you're gonna put out a document to the public, I think it's important to be technically correct. Because if you're not gonna be technically correct on one thing, why should you be technical about anything else?
Well, what is the purpose of the document? The document is to help the public navigate the process. The common vernacular would be the most appropriate. It isn't a textbook.
Well, they're also putting historic preservation briefs in here. They're referencing those.
Yeah.
Which I think they take a lot of time and dedication to be like technically correct in what they're presenting, right? So if they're gonna reference something they're trying to be technically correct on, I think they should be as well, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying that particular phrase, calling it a low slope roof would be meaningless to probably most people reading the document, including me, a fellow commissioner.
Like I
So-
said,
I think Jesse has something.
I just wanted to bring it back to the point of Brittany's presentation. I'll work on these guidelines. And that is substantively, are the guidelines acceptable to the commission? As far as semantics go, is what we refer to certain technical elements. Those are things that we can definitely look into updating and having reviewed. But I think it's important to bring the conversation back to the guidelines that we've updated, whether or not they are enforceable and acceptable by the commission.
well, let me go back. We're getting stuck on this roof. So we're also pointing to a column that's
I'm
a
not concerned
foundation.
about
So
that. That's
I know, we're
that
getting
in
stuck on a
typo.
roof. but-
Yeah, I'd put that in a typo
Yeah.
versus a semantics error.
I mean, that's a pretty big distinction though, a column and a foundation, right?
If it's mislabeled, then that's a,
So I'm just worried about things like that. That's just a brief review, and I'm worried about that over a brief review, there may be more than that in this document.
So the commission was provided time to review the document.
Yeah, but that's not really,
And I again, I understand what you're saying and I appreciate, like these are very important things to make very clear in our blue pages, language that we're using, making sure that it is enforceable, also understandable by the layperson, as well as by the commission members who are professionals. But I think the goal here is, are the guidelines enforceable and are they acceptable by the commission members?
Do you have a list, Chris, that you had already prepared of the?
no, and I really don't think that's our role
No,
and
I just wondered,
responsibility.
I just wondered if you had made a list as you were reading them of things that you had noticed like that.
is there
Are we
even a-
deliberating or are we
Yes, you're.
asking questions of staff?
Well, you can also ask questions, like it's not.
I didn't know if we were, so deliberation has begun.
Is there a budget for a third party review?
No.
I mean, I was kind of wondering if there's money for that.
I would just offer, if I have the floor. If we go back to an elevated view of what our task is today and take into account all the work that staff and the city attorney have already done to date. This has been very heavy. There's been thorough public review. There's been ample time for commission review, even those of us that have technical knowledge that we can apply, and I know some of us have, in terms of feedback into this document. From a what's enforceable standpoint, what's material standpoint, and what achieves the goal that was set to begin with, I think we have enough in front of us to go ahead and approve. Not just the section 2, but the attorney amendments or adjustments, revisions, as well as the revised graphics. I think it's all great. I know, and I do, as I say, I repeat it, it was a heavy lift. And I think I, for one, would like to thank staff and city attorney for all the effort that went into it. And I'm ready to move and approve.
I agree, looking at if we are looking at the content that was presented in phase 2A, as you said, Nick, it's looking at chapter 1, chapter 2, and the overall layout. And so it does seem that some of the items that you mentioned, Chris, fall into the overall layout, and it's getting more into the content. And so if there are other revisions that are coming to certain sections, I think it's worth further conversation with the landmark staff of incorporating some of those comments into those sections. But if we look at the sections that we were delegated to review, those are falling outside of just those areas that were part of phase 2A that we were set to review.
I will say those things that you commented on, Chris, like they're in the current guidelines. They will not change in the current guidelines.
What do you mean by that?
That foundation picture that you mentioned, that's in the current guidelines. I'm pretty sure I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Yeah, I guess it's more of a pattern, right? Like, I worry about that if there's something like kind of simple that haven't, like, what is the overall?
So I will say, as someone who is involved in each update to the guidelines, they're not simple updates. They're very time consuming.
Yeah, no. I think you're missing maybe I'm not relaying the point very well. I'm not saying the effort is not there, so that's not the point at all. And I know you guys are very proud of the extremely hard work that you've done. That's not the point at all. The internal review process or the hard work that's been done is not the point that I'm trying to discredit. The point is that has somebody independently reviewed it that hasn't looked at it 100 times already, right? That's the point, that somebody can look at it and say, objectively see things that you haven't seen already 100 times before. That's what I'm trying to point out.
Well, I think the response is that in terms of substantive changes here, it really has been focused on the chapter 2 windows and doors, and the rest of it was more in organizational cleanup. I think we can clearly change the caption that you have specifically pointed to. But in terms of a sweep through the entire document for terminology mistakes, that is not what this particular effort is about. You make a good point that perhaps it should happen, but that isn't what today's task is. I think we should change the caption that you pointed out. And consider including the point that you've made, a more technical review of the document in one of our upcoming phases. I think that is probably the best we can do at the moment.
Yeah, as Brittany pointed out, there is not a budget. This is all in-house. We're using the resources that we have, and it is in a sweeping review, and we are sure that there are probably mistakes or technical phrasing that is not correct. We're open to looking at those. It was just not in the scope of this current review. This is just basically uploading the existing guidelines into this new format, as well as rehauling chapter 2, specifically the window design guidelines.
And the reason why I say it's not simple is because we are so understaffed and we have such a heavy burden on us in terms of our workload that, like, this phase was not intended to be such a small phase. It was intended to also include the ADU updates, and we just could not get there with that. So while we always have these bigger goals in mind, realistically, what happens in terms of our workload doesn't allow us to always get there with these things. We had this updated format in 2023. It is now 2026, and we are just now getting around to even getting the format over. So like, these things are time consuming, and
Well, you guys did hire a consultant for the formatting.
they didn't do the formatting. Me and Andrew did the formatting.
But you guys did the formatting originally and then hired somebody else and they did the different formatting.
Andrew and I did the formatting.
Well, didn't we have a meeting you guys tried one version and then went to a different version?
They gave us a stylistic template that we then used.
Okay.
And I would say too, like, with current budget, like, their access to InDesign was cut off every 7 days. They had to gain access to InDesign, and it created a lot of issues with them having to redo work that they had already done. So this is a very small budget in-house project, and while we would love to do like a huge overhaul, as Brittany pointed out, we just do not have the capacity. So please, if you do have technical advice, give it to us. We will try and add it to future updates. It's just not in this current scope that's in front of you today.
I do want to bring this back though to, this is a good document. Several of us have read this thing cover to cover multiple times. This document is really, I think, aimed at a lay person. Many of the people who are looking at this are property owners who are just trying to understand what the goal is here. Any professional reading this, I think, is going to understand that technical error and still get the point. I do think this is a very well-written document, and yes, in the 84 pages or whatever it is, there's going to be a blip here and there, but I don't want this to be characterized as something that is less than well done. I'm sure that we can continue to improve upon it, but
I think our vision is always to make it better. Like, we see that it can always be better, but we also think it is a good document. We are proud of it.
And people are waiting for this document to plan their summer window replacement projects. I may or may not have clients who want to replace some windows.
Adam has something to say.
Madam Chair, is it okay? Adam Hernandez, Assistant City Attorney. I just want to bring the commission back to the role right now. This is a rulemaking process, and so there was a rulemaking hearing where nobody spoke, frankly, so the hearing aspect of it is done. The commission actually adopts these guidelines, and so it's going to take 5 votes to adopt the guidelines however you want them adopted. So with that being said, you all approve these. And so if you have proposed changes, you can make those. It's just going to take 5 votes of the commission to approve those changes. So it can be as presented. It can be as presented with the changes on pages 7, 8, 9 to this. But you all do approve this. And so if you do have proposed changes, this is actually the time to do that, or at a later meeting where you have time to look at this further. But this is your decision right now. I just want to make sure that the commission understands that.
I would like to give input. I just want to say that I think that this document greatly improves the clarity of the communication to the public. And I also really appreciate the framing in the intention and educational aspect. And I think it's really important and agree with the incorporation of public feedback into the distinction between common and character windows. Given that this is time to provide, I think, input on small typos, if I'm hearing correctly, I would just add that on the first page where it says, when there's a signature line for Erica, it says the chair of the Denver. I think that might need to include Landmark Preservation Commission after it. And then on the 2.4 intent statement, the spacing of the words is incorrect. And I do want to raise one thing for conversation and deliberation with the commission. With the addition on 1.7 under guidelines, which was introduced in this iteration, the guidelines say that it's the desired outcome. And I would just question whether or not that would indicate that this is aspirational versus a mandate. I always have that concern that there will be a misrepresentation that these are actually a regulation. So I would hope to deliberate that one phrase of desired outcome if it's possible to reread the language of that 7.1 guideline that was introduced. Thank you.
Are you talking about on page 13, Emily?
Well, this is something that was presented in this meeting, which I didn't see on the prior document to the to the clerk. It was just the box that defined intent statement and guideline. And this is a minor point, and I
Where's that
am
at?
good with the document's intent.
You're talking about chapter format on page 13.
I just don't have it in front of me. My apologies.
So it was on page 9 originally.
Okay.
And they're old guidelines. It was
Okay.
like a layout on how to use the guidelines. Based on city attorney comments that this was missing from the guidelines, I added it back to the guidelines.
Okay.
Slightly rewritten the text though.
Yeah.
13 now. It's page 13, right? Yep, page 13.
And does it just say that the guidelines are the desired outcome? If you don't mind reading that one statement. I can't find it within what I have currently.
I've got it written in.
Okay, good.
This,
Andrew's gonna read it.
Thank you very much.
It's the one under guidelines where it says, describe a desired outcome related to the intent statements. They are organized and numbered by topic for ease of reference within their corresponding chapter. Is that this statement you were talking about?
It was, and I would just question the other commissioners and the lawyer present, whether or not that's specific enough to indicate what is being offered.
For location, that is the last bullet point on page 13.
Thank you.
Which it just took me a second to realize it's page 13 of the document, not page
Oh,
13 of the
sorry.
PDF.
So we
because
did we exported these in spread, so it has both pages, so I do apologize for that. Yes, 13 of the document.
Took me a second.
And then the old guidelines, that was on page 9. I'm gonna pull that up once I learn how to click correctly.
To expedite things, I can accept all the conditions that Emily just stated, as well as Chris, as a matter. So I don't know if that gets us there, but let's go.
Yours, you're really quiet.
Yeah, I would vote support. Improvement document.
So I'm just curious how we would need to change the suggested motion.
We'll have Emily, since she has the majority of the conditions, I would have her make the motion if she's comfortable.
Okay,
And
so,
then Chris can add his.
And if typos don't need to be incorporated here, totally fine with me. It's just a process question.
so I'm sensing that we are ready for a motion. And it sounds, it's being suggested, that, Emily or Chris, since you guys have, kind of the condition statements, that we can make a motion with those conditions included. So if someone would like to make a motion, we can start there.
I'm gonna share the recommended motion. Okay.
Okay. Would I state those two minor typos?
If they're truly typos, what you could do
They
is
are.
just add a condition, a general condition to an approval saying, just paraphrasing here, I approve these design guidelines with conditions, staff go through and fix any obvious typographical errors. I do worry that sometimes typos can have substantive differences, so I think we really do want to be careful on what we're fixing. I would also say, Brittany, is there an exact document you can reference, like the footer draft effective February 17, 2026, or just to make sure everyone's looking at the same document and approving the same one?
It's the one that filed with clerk and recorder. There's a file stamp, February 10th.
Okay. And that one has dates that have been made so far.
And you said with the capacity of the staff to edit obvious typographical errors, was that the clause?
Yeah, I think that's fine. And then obviously, if there are other substantive changes that commissioners want, now would be the time to bring that as a condition as well.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and make a motion and see what the impact is. I move to adopt the updated design guidelines for Denver landmark structures and districts per presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the, and that's the document effective February 10th as filed with the clerk of court, with the condition that the staff has the ability to edit obvious typographical errors.
Thank you, Emily. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
But Emily said clerk of court.
Oh.
If someone could make an amendment, the clerk.
Oh, sorry, clerk
and recorder.
Someone on the commission has to make an amendment.
May I make a friendly amendment to correct it to say the clerk and recorder? Is that correct? Emily, will you accept my friendly amendment?
Yes, and thank you.
Can we go real slow on the vote?
Yes.
I feel like it's not gonna be clear.
Yeah. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
All those abstained? The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Don't we have a
Oh,
violation?
I'm a liar. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Crystal.
Wait a second here.
Sorry, Crystal.
Crystal's like, what am I doing?
I'm blacking out.
So moving on to the next section of our agenda, violations. These are items for which a notice of violation has been issued by zoning and neighborhood inspection services. They require individual consideration and approval or correction if necessary to achieve compliance with the design guidelines for Denver landmark structures and districts. The project in review is 2025 COA 627-2709 West 36th Avenue, Potter Highlands.
Hey, Corey, can you announce that there
Oh, are there any ex parte conflicts of interest or recusals for the commission? No? Okay. Crystal, you have the floor.
Thanks. Okay, so the property is at 2709 West 36th Avenue. It was built in 1905 and is located in the Potter Highlands Historic District and is a corner property located at North Clay Street and West 36th Avenue. The home is a 1.5 story contributing structure that has been altered over time. And the application before you today is to correct some violations that have happened since this project was reviewed and approved at the LPC on September 2nd of 2025. Next slide. So here you can see the overall site plan on the left. The attic is being converted to a primary suite for the property owner, and they are adding 3 new roof dormers that were already approved by the commission. I've outlined the previously reviewed and approved application in blue, and then outlined in orange what has now occurred. So the amount of roof demolition has increased from approximately 22% to 48.8% during construction of the new dormers. Next slide. So here are the photographs provided by the architect showing the exterior and interior roof conditions as of December 29th, 2025. The applicants had started the approved work, but failed an inspection on December 17th of 2025, and a stop work order was issued for the full project on December 23rd and remained in place until January 2nd, 2026, when it was determined appropriate to allow the work not associated with the roof concerns to proceed, and then the applicant was allowed to dry in the roof construction. Next slide. So again, on the left, outlined in blue are the previously approved plans, and then outlined in orange is the current revised plans. As you can see, the roof was built back to match the previously approved plans, and the only real visible change is to the siding on the new dormers, which is proposed to be changed to a shake shingle, which the existing and then the original dormer at the front will retain scallop siding and be repaired to match that historic condition. Design guideline 2.4 states to replace original building materials in kind if repair is not feasible. During construction of these new dormers, the applicant's contractor demolished more of the roof than was originally intended. And then the contractor stated that the roof rafters were in poor condition and needed replacement to support these new dormers. The contractor has used wood materials to build back the roof structure and has matched the historic size and slope of the roof, meeting design guideline 2.4. Next slide. And then here again is just what was reviewed and approved in blue with the new one in orange. And design guideline 2.25 states to preserve the form, materials, and features of an original historic roof. And so again, the overall roof form and materials have been rebuilt to match the historic condition, but with these new dormers added, and the angle of the historic roof and scale has been maintained. And that original front facade dormer is also preserved and repaired. Next slide. And then finally, the previous and then revised isometric views. So the reconstruction of the roof meets design guidelines 2.4 and 2.25. And the roof will be constructed using materials which are wood, like the historic materials, and matches that historic roof slope and profile. So staff is recommending approval.
See what you have.
You're having a rough first.
I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
the first go, it's not gonna be perfect.
You're doing great.
I guess for violations, do we have, or well, no, anyway, so. Yeah, but we'll ask questions of staff. Yeah, so does anyone from the commission have questions for staff? No questions.
I think Taylor is moving the applicants over. Kyle and Paul, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn your camera on if you want. And you'll have 10 minutes. And whenever you start, I'll start your time.
Go ahead, Paul.
Can you see me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, just to reiterate what Crystal had mentioned, the general contractor, as many projects go in Denver, design doesn't always meet the field criteria and conditions, and so without consulting us, more of the existing roof was demoed, but upon my site visit, we made sure that The new is being replaced in the old shape and condition and level, and I went through pretty painstakingly, got up on the roof myself and just made sure that everything was going to be aligned with the old. And you could see in the of these images here, the top middle seamless interface of existing and new roof, as I labeled it. You can see the old condition, and you can see where the new, aside from the dormer, where the existing roof replacement is occurring there. And so I've pledged to work with the owner to make sure that moving forward, that all of the conditions of the plans are strictly adhered to. I know that doesn't always happen. Done many projects in Denver, but Landmark, it's a very particular scenario here, and we have to make sure that the plans are adhered to strictly. So I've vowed to make sure that that happens moving forward.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's all I have.
Does the commission have any questions for the applicant?
Hey, Paul, I just got one. Did you have your structural engineer look at the new trusses just because their configuration was different, because it was demolition was different and the sistering was different and everything?
The owner hired the structural engineer separately. Kyle, maybe you could speak to if Nate's been out to the site. I know he's been informed of it. I don't know if he's made it out to the site.
He's aware of the situation and hasn't expressed any concerns to me or to Paul. So any sort of, it's all built really structurally sound per his recommendations and per the specifications of the plans as they were originally approved. So this is really more a question of just more demolition happening that it should have happened by the contractor when we first started the job. And so it didn't really impact the structural. So yeah, that's all.
Okay. If that's all, then I think we're ready for commission deliberation.
I would just offer that with respect to what Chris said, he's probably right that there are structural concerns, but that's not really our approval. I'm kind of happy looking at that. That's not my roof.
No, I think that's just a friendly reminder that it does impact structure. It's the roof structure, right?
Yeah.
And I would just say that I would definitely have your engineer look at it.
Friendly.
Super friendly.
So, if anybody else has
questions, comments? Yeah, I would agree. It seems like an unfortunate sequence of events, but it does seem like the best way forward is approval or continuing remedying the situation. So.
Can I make the motion? I move to approve application 2025-COA-627 for the reconstruction of the roof and recladding of the front dormer with scallop shingles at 2709 West 36th Avenue, as per design guidelines 2.4 and 2.25, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Nick. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstained? The motion passes. For real. Okay. And with that, we're adjourning the meeting.
Wow, gavel and everything.
And we are adjourning it at 2:32 p.m.
Yeah.
Done.